At 9:06 on a Tuesday morning, Marcus stood in his kitchen holding a cup of coffee and realized there was nowhere he needed to be. No manager waiting. No meeting starting. No urgent message glowing on his phone. No commute. No alarm for tomorrow. At 39 years old, Marcus had achieved the goal he had been chasing for more than a decade. He was retired. His mortgage was almost gone. His investments could cover his expenses. He had enough cash to survive several bad years without selling anything important. He had escaped. And for the first 47 minutes, it felt incredible. Then the silence began. At first, Marcus mistook it for peace. By the third week, it felt more like being forgotten. By the third month, he was lying to everyone. Whenever friends asked how retirement was going, Marcus smiled and gave them the answer they expected. Best decision I ever made. He posted photographs of morning walks, quiet cafes and empty beaches. People commented that he was living the dream. Nobody saw him sitting in his car outside his old office on a rainy Thursday, watching people he used to complain about rushing through the entrance. Nobody knew that part of him wanted to follow them inside. And nobody knew what Marcus did next. Because 6 months after escaping work forever, he secretly applied for a job. Not because he needed the money. Because he was beginning to suspect that the life he had spent years escaping had been holding together parts of him he did not know how to replace. Marcus had not always hated work. When he joined the company at 26, the job made him feel as though his life was finally moving. The salary was ordinary, but the future looked organized. He had a desk, a title and a reason to wake up before sunrise. Every few months, someone gave him a new responsibility. Every year, there was another target. The company placed ladders everywhere and convinced people that climbing them was the same as knowing where they were going. Marcus climbed quickly. He stayed late. He answered emails during dinner. He volunteered for projects nobody else wanted because being needed felt dangerously similar to being important. Then, at 31, his father suffered a serious health scare. Marcus arrived at the hospital carrying his laptop. He answered messages in the corridor while his mother sat alone beside a vending machine. His father recovered, but one sentence stayed with Marcus. "You work like someone is going to give the years back." Marcus laughed when he heard it. Later, he understood. That night, Marcus calculated how much money he would need to stop working permanently. The number looked impossible. So he broke it into pieces. Clear the debt. Build an emergency fund. Increase his income. Invest the difference. Avoid allowing every pay rise to become a new monthly payment. Marcus did not call it retirement in public. He called it freedom. That sounded healthier. Every financial decision began passing through one question. Will this move the date closer? When colleagues upgraded their cars, Marcus kept his old one. When his salary increased, he increased his investments before changing his lifestyle. He moved to a smaller apartment, learned to cook and turned down expensive habits he did not actually enjoy. The sacrifices felt easier because they belonged to a story. Marcus was not depriving himself. He was buying back years. By 35, his investments were growing faster than he had expected. By 37, a strong market and a promotion moved the date dangerously close. He began maintaining a countdown. 814 workdays left. 743. 509. Every difficult meeting became temporary. Every irritating colleague became a person he would soon outlive professionally. When his manager criticized him, Marcus did not argue. He thought, "You have no idea how close I am to never needing this room again." The countdown gave him power. It also gave his unhappiness a deadline. That became a problem. Marcus stopped asking whether anything could improve now. He had a future in which everything would be solved. He only needed to endure the present long enough to reach it. At 39, the number arrived. Not perfectly. Markets could fall. Inflation could rise. Health costs could change. But Marcus had planned cautiously. His spending was controlled. His portfolio was diversified. He owned a small consulting asset that produced irregular income without requiring much involvement. The plan worked. On his final day, the office organized a small gathering. There was cake, warm juice, and a card signed by people who knew very little about him. His manager made a joke about Marcus returning within 6 months. Everyone laughed. Marcus laughed hardest. He packed one box, carried it through the lobby and walked outside at 4:38 in the afternoon. The air felt different. For years, Friday evening had been a temporary release. This time, Monday could not take it back. Marcus drove home slowly. He thought he would feel victorious. What he felt was relief. Relief is powerful. But relief is not designed to become a permanent identity. The first week felt like a holiday. Marcus slept until his body woke naturally. He made elaborate breakfasts. He went to the gym when it was almost empty and walked through shops without joining a queue. He discovered the strange privilege of moving through the world while most people were working. The streets belonged to parents with young children, older people, delivery drivers, and Marcus. He felt as though he had discovered a secret city hidden inside normal business hours. On Monday afternoon, he saw 2 former colleagues rushing past a cafe window. One held a phone against his ear. The other carried a laptop bag and looked exhausted. Marcus felt grateful. Then, unexpectedly, he felt jealous. They were going somewhere that expected them. Marcus was not. He dismissed the feeling. That was the first warning. The second appeared a month later. Marcus's days began losing their shape. Without work, there was no reason breakfast needed to end at a particular time. Without a commute, there was no boundary between morning and afternoon. He made lists. Read more. Exercise. Learn a language. Travel. Start a garden. Call friends. The list looked like a life. It behaved like optional homework. Marcus had dreamed about having unlimited time, but unlimited time created a strange pressure. Any ordinary day now felt like a wasted opportunity. If he watched television, he felt guilty. If he read, he wondered whether he should be traveling. If he traveled, he wondered whether he was spending too much. If he rested, he felt he had not earned it. Work had exhausted Marcus, but it had also given rest a clear purpose. Retirement removed the prison and the permission slip. At first, Marcus told himself he needed to decompress. Then weeks became months. His friends were still working. They loved the idea of his freedom more than they had time to participate in it. Marcus suggested lunch on Wednesday. They asked about the weekend. He suggested a short trip. They had deadlines, children and limited annual leave. Retiring early had given Marcus control of his time without giving anyone else control of theirs. He had escaped the schedule that connected him to most of the people he knew. So Marcus began spending more time alone. He went to museums alone. He ate lunch alone. He took a 3-week trip alone because everyone else could manage only 4 days. The photographs looked peaceful. The experience often was. But peace without connection can begin to feel like disappearance. The third warning arrived when Marcus stopped knowing how to answer a simple question. What do you do? At first, he said, I'm retired. People reacted predictably. Some were impressed. Some were suspicious. Some assumed he had inherited money. Others immediately began asking how much he had. A few laughed as though retirement at 39 were either a joke or a personal insult. So Marcus changed the answer. I manage investments. That sounded too grand. I do some consulting. That was technically true but emotionally false. I'm taking time off. That made retirement sound accidental. Marcus had spent years trying to separate his identity from his job. Only after leaving did he discover how much of his identity the job had been carrying. Work had answered questions he had never realized were questions. Where do you belong? What are you improving? Who needs you? How do you know whether today mattered? A salary was only one of the answers. Marcus had removed the entire structure because he disliked one part of it. He had prepared financially for retirement. He had not prepared psychologically. 3 months after leaving work, Marcus attended a family dinner. His brother asked how his week had been. Marcus searched his memory. He had exercised. Read 2 books. Reorganized a storage cupboard. Watched the market move. Taken long walks. Quiet, Marcus said. His brother nodded and turned to tell a story about a crisis at work. The story involved a difficult client, a missed delivery and a meeting that lasted until midnight. Marcus would once have considered it evidence of a terrible life. Now he listened with unexpected hunger. The story had conflict. Characters. Consequences. It moved. Marcus's week had been comfortable. His brother's week was interesting. That frightened him. Because Marcus had built retirement on the belief that eliminating stress would create happiness. Instead, he discovered that a life with no demands can produce a different kind of stress. The fear that nothing depends on you. Marcus began creating artificial urgency. He checked his investment portfolio several times a day, even though his plan required no action. A small market decline could occupy an entire afternoon. He refreshed financial news, searched for threats and calculated whether his retirement was still safe. The numbers had not meaningfully changed. His relationship with them had. While working, the portfolio had been a door. Now it was the floor beneath him. Every movement felt personal. Marcus became more anxious about money after becoming financially independent than he had been during the final years of employment. This was not because he had less. It was because he no longer had a salary arriving to repair mistakes. The money had changed from possibility into protection. He became afraid to spend it. Marcus had planned for travel, but each flight felt like a permanent reduction in future security. He could afford better furniture, but the old sofa remained. He analyzed restaurant prices while owning enough assets to cover decades of meals. The man who had retired to gain freedom began asking his spreadsheet for permission to live. That was the 4th warning. The 5th was harder to admit. Marcus began resenting people who still had jobs. Not because they had less freedom. Because they still had progress everyone could recognize. Promotions. Projects. Bonuses. New responsibilities. Their lives produced visible milestones. Marcus's retirement was designed to stop the race. But without another destination, stopping felt like being overtaken. One afternoon, a former colleague named David called. David had received a promotion Marcus once wanted. He complained about the workload for 20 minutes, then said, "Honestly, I envy you." Marcus looked around his silent apartment. "I envy you too," he almost said. Instead, he replied, "You'll understand when you get here." The lie came easily. That night, Marcus opened his old company's website. He studied the leadership page. David's new title appeared beneath his photograph. Marcus told himself he was curious. Then he checked the vacancies. There was an opening in another division. The work looked difficult. The salary was lower than what Marcus had previously earned. He read the description 3 times. For the first time in months, he felt something clear. Interest. Marcus closed the page immediately. Returning to work felt like failure. He had announced his retirement. People admired him for escaping. His entire financial identity had been built around the claim that work was the problem. What would it mean if he voluntarily returned? He imagined his former manager laughing. 6 months. Exactly as predicted. So Marcus told nobody. He updated his resume in secret. The document looked strange. The old version had been designed by someone climbing. The new version belonged to someone who did not need the salary and did not know whether that made him more powerful or less serious. Marcus applied. 2 days later, the company invited him to an interview. He nearly cancelled. Instead, he wore the suit that had remained untouched since his final day and took a train across the city. As he entered the building, Marcus felt something he had not felt during retirement. Nervousness. He had forgotten nervousness could be energizing. The interviewer asked why he wanted to return to work. Marcus gave a polished answer about contribution, challenge and collaboration. It was not false. It was incomplete. The truth was less impressive. I need somewhere for part of me to go. He did not say it. The interview lasted 50 minutes. Marcus enjoyed almost every second. Then the interviewer described the schedule. Long hours. Constant availability. A culture that rewarded urgency. The old trap had changed its furniture but not its design. Marcus left without wanting the job. Yet the interview revealed something important. He did not miss employment. He missed structure, challenge, contribution, and people. Those things had arrived through employment, but they did not belong exclusively to it. Marcus had confused retiring from one system with retiring from every form of useful effort. That evening, he called David. I haven't been honest, Marcus said. About what? Retirement. There was a pause. Marcus expected laughter. Instead, David asked, how bad? Marcus told him. The empty days. The isolation. The anxiety. The secret application. When he finished, David said, I thought you were happy. So did I. Then David admitted something of his own. He had not called because he envied Marcus's retirement. He had called because he was considering leaving the company and was terrified. Both men had been performing opposite versions of success for each other. Marcus performed freedom. David performed momentum. Neither asked whether the life behind the performance worked. They met for lunch the following week. David asked Marcus what he actually wanted his days to contain. Marcus began answering with negatives. No commute. No pointless meetings. No manager controlling his calendar. David interrupted him. That's what you don't want. What do you want? Marcus did not know. This was the question he should have answered before retiring. He had created a precise financial plan for leaving work and almost no life plan for what would replace it. So Marcus conducted an experiment. He stopped calling himself retired for 90 days. He called himself available. The distinction changed his thinking. Retirement sounded like an ending. Availability sounded like a resource. Marcus rebuilt his week around 5 things his old job had provided, whether he liked it or not. Structure. Challenge. Connection. Contribution. Progress. He joined a small business mentoring program and agreed to help 2 founders every Tuesday. The work was unpaid. That mattered. Because it forced Marcus to decide whether the activity itself had value without using income as proof. He began teaching a financial literacy class at a local community center. The first session had 7 people. One left halfway through. Another challenged almost everything he said. Marcus went home energized. On Thursdays, he worked on a research project he had postponed for years. On Fridays, he kept the day deliberately open. Not empty. Open. If nothing happened, he walked, read or visited family without telling himself he should be somewhere more productive. Slowly, the days regained shape. Marcus also changed the way he managed money. He created a separate annual spending account. The investments would transfer a defined amount into it each month. That money was not waiting to become future security. It had already been assigned to the present. For years, Marcus had believed the skill of wealth was refusing to spend. Retirement forced him to learn the opposite skill. Spending deliberately without interpreting every purchase as danger. He traveled again. This time, he invited his mother for part of the trip rather than searching for someone with unlimited availability. He paid for the experience without checking the portfolio from the hotel. Nothing collapsed. Marcus did not suddenly become happy every day. That was another fantasy he had to abandon. A good life still contains boredom, confusion, loneliness, difficult mornings. Freedom does not remove those experiences. It changes how much choice you have in responding to them. A year after retiring, Marcus returned to his old office. Not as an employee. David had left the company and was building a small firm. He asked Marcus to advise the team 2 days each week. Marcus accepted under 3 conditions. No evening messages. No unnecessary meetings. Either side could end the arrangement without drama. The first Tuesday, Marcus walked through the lobby at 8:52 in the morning. The receptionist recognized him. "I thought you retired." "I did," Marcus said. She looked confused. Marcus smiled. "So did I." The work gave him problems worth solving without allowing the problems to own the entire week. Some days, he was tired. Some meetings were still pointless. One client was unbearable. But the difference was choice. Marcus was no longer staying because his mortgage, status and identity depended on it. He was there because, for now, the work belonged inside the life he had chosen. That is the part many retirement fantasies leave out. The goal is not necessarily to remove work. The goal is to remove captivity. Work can be exhausting, political and badly designed. It can also provide rhythm, community, mastery, and a sense that your effort reaches beyond your own comfort. Retirement does not automatically replace those things. Money can fund an empty calendar. It cannot decide what deserves a place on it. Marcus eventually told people he had hated early retirement. Some reacted as though he had wasted an opportunity they would have understood better. Others said he should have traveled more, exercised more or learned to relax. But the problem had not been a shortage of activities. It had been a shortage of meaning attached to them. You can fill every hour and still feel unnecessary. You can rest all day and never feel restored if you do not know what the rest is serving. Marcus began sharing the lessons he wished he had learned before leaving. First, test the life before purchasing it permanently. Take a long break if you can. Not a one-week holiday filled with novelty. A real trial long enough for the excitement to disappear. Observe what happens when Monday loses its authority. Do you create structure? Do you isolate? Do you spend comfortably? Do you become anxious when nobody requires you? A retirement plan should survive ordinary Tuesdays, not just photographs from beaches. Second, retire to something, not only from something. Escaping a bad job is a valid goal. But once the relief fades, the empty space needs a shape. That shape could be family, creative work, volunteering, study, building, caregiving, travel, or a different form of paid work. The activity matters less than the functions it provides. Challenge. Connection. Progress. Contribution. Third, separate financial independence from permanent inactivity. Financial independence means work becomes negotiable. It does not mean work becomes forbidden. You are allowed to earn money after reaching enough. You are allowed to enjoy a project, accept responsibility, or return to a profession under better terms. A job after financial independence is not proof that the plan failed. Returning to captivity would be. Choosing useful effort is different. Fourth, plan for spending. Many people who become wealthy through restraint carry the restraint into a stage where it begins defeating the purpose. Create rules that permit enjoyment just as carefully as you created rules that encouraged saving. Money that can never be used is not freedom. It is a scoreboard. Fifth, protect your social life before you leave the environment that provides most of it. Colleagues may not be your closest friends, but repeated contact still matters. When work disappears, so do dozens of small human interactions. Build relationships that can survive outside the office. Join communities based on shared interests, not shared employers. And finally, do not expect retirement to answer the question of who you are. Money can give you time to face that question. That is not the same as answering it. 2 years after leaving his full-time job, Marcus woke at 6:30 on a Tuesday morning. He did not need an alarm, but he used one. He made coffee, reviewed notes for the community class and prepared for a meeting with David's team. His afternoon was open. He might read. He might visit his mother. He might do nothing useful at all. The difference was that the day had both structure and space. Not because a company owned it. Because Marcus had designed it. He no longer introduced himself as retired. He no longer introduced himself through a job title either. When people asked what he did, Marcus gave an answer that would once have sounded uncertain. A few things that matter to me. That was enough. Marcus had spent years believing work was stealing his life. Some of it was. But when he removed work completely, he discovered that the job had also been hiding a deeper question. What would he choose to do if survival no longer made the choice for him? Early retirement did not answer that question. It made avoiding it impossible. Marcus had not failed at retirement. He had succeeded financially and arrived psychologically unprepared. The mistake was not leaving work. The mistake was believing freedom meant never being needed again. Because the richest life is not necessarily the one with no obligations. It is the one where you can choose which obligations deserve you. Marcus retired early. He secretly hated it. Then he learned that freedom was not an empty calendar. Freedom was the ability to fill it deliberately.